Yeah, so my name's Suzy Wrack and I am a women's football writer for The Guardian, which I've been doing since 2017, on off, started as a freelancer, and then now I'm full-time writing on women's football. I'm here today for the Women in Football conference, which I have been coming to for quite a long time. I joined Women in Football before I started at The Guardian, and actually have been helped out by a lot of senior Women in Football founders, like throughout my career from the very beginning. I don't think I'd be in my job at The Guardian without a lot of them, so it's a great organisation and always good to come and speak to people and network and speak at a session today as well, which was great.
Yeah, so you touched on how you had this when you were coming up throughout your career as well. So what are the sort of moments that you really remember about why this is such a great event?
Yes, I was saying in the session earlier that when I first decided I wanted to start going into sports journalism, which I never really thought about before. I was doing design for newspapers, so I wasn't doing anything related to sport. I'd always loved sport, always been passionate about it, never seen sports journalism as a thing that really existed as something that people did. Even though I read the pages, it didn't make sense. I just never connected those dots. And so one of the very first, I signed up to everything, women in football, women in journalism, anything I could find that I could go to an event of and meet people and, try and find a way into the industry. And one of the things I went to was a London Press Club event where Vikki, Orvice, one of the founding members, who's sadly not with us now, was on the panel, and it was mostly broadcasters, and then she was on the panel as a writer for The Sun. And so after that session had finished, I went up to her and I was like, I've got an interview for The Guardian tomorrow, sub-editor job, have you got any advice for me? And she went, yeah, you're not going to get that job. And I was like, okay, thanks. And she went, no, there's a reason you're not going to get that job. And she was like, the industry is full of freelancers, so The Guardian will have loads of freelancers working for it. So when a job comes up, they're all applying for it too, and it's highly likely that they will employ someone that they've already got working for them day in, day out on that desk as a freelancer and knows the job. She said, you won't get that job, but ask for shifts. So I did, and it was something that was really unnatural. I never thought that was, something that you should do, if you get a job rejection. But I asked for feedback, I asked for shifts, and they replied saying, to be honest, there was very little you did wrong. We went for someone who was a slightly stronger sub than you, who I then subsequently found out was someone who had been freelancer beforehand. Would you like to come and do some layout shifts? And that started my journey at The Guardian. And I started off doing Saturday late shifts, 5 p.m. to 1 a.m, working on The Observer every single week, and then it grew from there, and I got my foot in the door that way. Again, when they were looking for someone to write regularly on women's football for a weekly women's football column, Anna Kessel was working there at the time. They went to Anna Kessel, the editors, and said, anyone you recommend to work on to write on women's football for us? And she's like, you've got Suzy sat over there doing layout, and she's writing for all these other places. And then they got me in to write on women's football weekly. And so yeah, pretty much every stage. I did some time at the BBC, and that was another Women in Football member that kind of got me in the door there and helped me through the interview process and stuff. And yeah, so been a big part of my journey.
Yeah, and you're mentioning obviously everybody sort of helping each other on their way. So events like this at Wembley today, and everybody coming to work together to network, why is that so important? And why do we keep needing events like this?
It's so invaluable, particularly in journalism. I mean, it's probably invaluable in just football generally as well for the same reason, but such an old boys club, and they network so efficiently, and they all go drinking together, and they all know each other, and their dads worked in the industry, or their uncles, or they know someone quite often. A lot of the young men coming into this industry nowadays, or they went to the same university. And there's not really that many forums for women in sports to get together and provide the same networking opportunities. So that's why I think this is important, because it is, as my journey shows, it's very much about who you know. Did I know Vikki Orvice that well when she gave me that advice? No, I'd never met her. But then we stayed in touch, and she mentored me for quite some time, right up until she died. Did Anna Kessel know me much? We'd met twice before she recommended me to write, but she had been reading my stuff online because I'd been tagging her in posts on Twitter and stuff when I posted my articles. So it's about being able to get your journalism, football, it's about being able to get your face in the right rooms for when things come up, not necessarily when things come up, but just for when things come up. And this is an opportunity to meet people that a lot of women don't get in the industry because there are so few of us around. And the advantage is, because there's so few of us around, it's like quite easy for us to lift everyone up, because it's not really that competitive. There's quite a lot of jobs in football, in journalism even. There's, it's a shrinking industry, but a lot of big companies recognise they need to diversify their workforces. So there is space for everyone, and there's a real opportunity for people to lift each other up in a really nice way.
And obviously today you've been in a panel as well, so what were some of your highlights been in that panel today?
Yeah, it was really good. I always like doing those kind of panels, which was, very much like, the people in sports journalism, how they got there, that kind of thing. Because I was there as a writer, in very much the same way that when I went to that panel that Vikki Orvice was on by the London Press Club, she was the written journalist, there was a load of broadcasters. To me as the writer and a load of broadcasters, I always really like hearing the crossover similarities between the jobs we do, because often they can feel quite different, but like some of the experiences we have, like logistically and things like that, are actually really, really familiar, and the feeling of walking into a room as a female journalist where everyone is a bloke is like really quite difficult, and they face that in exactly the same way that we do as writers too. So yeah, all those little similarities across the industry, it's always nice to feel like you're not quite so alone. And there were some really great questions too. There's a really good question on how you use your voice as a journalist and your job as a journalist to like talk about the causes that you care about, like diversity and things, and that's one of the things I love most about my job. So it's quite nice to talk about how I kind of basically see journalism as a tool for doing good more widely as well. Was quite nice.
Yeah, it's great. And in terms of, talking about being on the panel, we're asking everybody what their sort of top tip they would give to people breaking out into the industry as social top. So top tip.
Yeah, so I always fall back to the bit of advice that Vikki Orvice gave me at the very, very start of my journey, which was to ask for shifts, because there aren't a lot of jobs available in sports journalism. It is a shrinking industry, but there's so many freelance opportunities out there, and getting your foot in the door really matters. That is the sort of advice I pass on, because it's what got me in. I think a lot of people leave university thinking, I'll just apply for this job, I'll apply for that, that's the dream job, I'll apply for that job, I'll apply for that job, and that's not going to work in journalism. You have to go for anything and everything. If it's a day a week here, a day a week there, hopefully paid, because obviously being unpaid is extremely prohibitive, but you have to sort of take anything and keep your finger in as many pies as possible, because I always I did layout, I did editing, I even did a motion graphics course at one point while I was working with a 2-year-old as well, and doing 5 days a week at the Sunday Times, 2 days a week at the Guardian, and then 2 evenings a week on motion graphics, to basically just diversify my skill set as much as possible, because then you can pick up anything, and that's all you need, is just to get in the door in any capacity. I got into the Guardian doing layout. I started to do a bit of sub-editing. I'm now a full-time writer for them. It doesn't what you go in as doesn't necessarily mean that that's where you're going to stay. So I think that's really important. Just get in any way you can, and then go from there. Then start to think, what is my route to the dream job that I want.
Finally, I sort of wanted to ask you, you are the Guardian's women's football editor and writer, so where do you think England are at the moment with a World Cup ahead of them, and what would you like to see them go out to Australia to?
They have to win it for me. I think it'll be if they leave the tournament not won it, it will be a disappointment. I don't think it'd be the end of the world, in that there's so many good teams at the top level right now, but it does feel like perfect timing. Australia have had trouble, the US are in sort of a period of turnover, France have been in turmoil, Canada in turmoil, Spain politically in turmoil as well. So and England are very much supported team, and when I say supported team, I mean everyone around them is singing from the same hymn sheet. They're being invested in, the coverage has increased, the support staff and the level of backing internally, the support for them at club level as well, sponsors, etc. Everything is ready for them, and their chances are great. The only thing that could hold them back is the injuries to of Beth Mead and things like that, but in terms of potential, for me, they're the favourites to win the World Cup. And I wasn't saying that before the Euros, so things have changed quite quickly for them, but I think everything has sort of come together at the right time for it to actually potentially be a really good summer. But if they had a exit like really tough game with Spain or the US semi-finals, I don't think that would be like a failure. It would be a disappointment.